Hi there, this is Eugenio from Genius Coffee and Espresso Equipment in Vancouver, British Columbia. Today we're going to do a quick tutorial of how to take apart the flange that holds the bean hopper on a Fiorentato FG5E. First of all, let's see what tools we need. We need a flathead screwdriver, we need a brass brush. It's better to be brass because brass won't contaminate the components because the flange mainly is made out of brass. A rubber mallet, just to loosen up the flange a little bit from the hardened coffee oils around it. And then a good vacuum to clean up the beans before we take everything apart so you won't have a spillage all around. Here we are. So let's start with first thing. The hopper has to come out. Before you take the hopper out, close it so that there is no beans coming through. And then there's a screw coming in from right underneath it. That screw needs to come out, otherwise the hopper is going to crack. The flange of the hopper is going to crack. So that screw comes out with a flathead screwdriver. Just bring it to the tip of the flange, then slowly remove the hopper. And we are. Put the hopper in a safe place. Now next thing, just make sure that the screw doesn't fall off, so just setting it back in a little bit, or even better, remove the screw. Next thing is we want to clean up the beans that are inside the flange here. So with a vacuum, clean everything up. There's a little knob here. If you unscrew this knob, this is the lock for the flange, so it doesn't move as you're using it when it's grinding. So bring it to the edge. At this point now we're able to take this top flange out. Now to take the top flange out, this is an opposite thread. So to unscrew it, you want to go clockwise. The flange is marked with grosso, which means coarse. So going coarser, you're making the burrs thicker, farther apart, and it will come out. If you have a hard time turning the flange, I suggest you hammer on all four sides, just to loosen up the flange from the oils that might get stuck inside. If you don't have a rubber mallet, the best thing is to use a normal hammer and use the wooden handle and just hit it with the handle. Never hit it with the metal. Metal on metal is going to mark the flange and it might crack it. So at this point we're ready to unscrew it. So count the clock, we turn it. It is a little hard because there's built up oils in there. Here we are. Well, about time that we get the little servicing for this grinder, that's why it's a little hard. Got a bit of thread, so you're going to have to turn it a few times. So at this point, we have the flange released. We just have to remove it, remove the other flange that holds the hopper, and then start cleaning the inside. And watch out for the spring that are inside underneath this aluminum flange. So the first one comes out, just like that. Here we are. And now the holder to the hopper. It just lies right there. Now the holder to the hopper holds the burrs right there. They might be a little bit dirty from the oil buildup. And there's 3 little springs. You want to remove those so that we don't lose them. We're going to have to vacuum in there. That way they don't get stuck up in the vacuum. Now the best thing is to loosen up whatever it's in there. Do not introduce anything that is metallic, otherwise it might scratch the burrs and you might lose the sharpness. There is threads on the side. They need to be cleaned properly. With the vacuum, clean up the excess. Now it's very important to clean the threads that are around the outside here, because when you put the flange back on, you want the flange threads to be able to engage rapidly and without any force. So with a metal brush, just clean the threads around so that you remove any of the oil. Just like that. Don't go up and down, because by going up and down you might ruin the threads. You want to move with the line of the threads. Here we are. Now, quick vacuum again, just to clean it all out. And voila, we have cleaned the inside of the machine. So next thing now is to clean the different components before we put everything back in. Now the spring, there's going to be a little bit of dirt. I would suggest to just lightly brush it. They're steel, so it's better to always use the same type of metal brush to clean the components. So these are being steel, we use a steel brush. If it was brass, we use a brass brush. Now, for the flange part, to clean the outside, use a pick. Try to not go on the inside towards the cutting blades, so that way you don't loosen the sharpness. And just scrape off the excess oils and coffee grounds that got stuck in time. There we are, everything just comes out nicely. Yeah, just like that. And now, there we are. Maybe use a soft brush, so you can just clean a little better. Now we'll just vacuum everything. Now, on the outside, if there is a little bit of white stuff, that's all it is the moisture that got released from the beans and in the air that attacked the aluminum. The flange is made out of brass, so probably the two also reacted a little bit together and created this white stuff on it. That's just oxidization. So let's remove it with some Scotch-Brite. You can get one of these at any Home Depot or Home Hardware or any other stores like that. Just brush it up nicely. Just like that. And here we are. Nice clean surface. Before you put it in, just inspect it, make sure that everything is gone. Clean up as much as you can so that you have it nice and shiny when you put it in, and you're good. On this case here, we've got the same thing, so let's just a little Scotch-Brite, clean it up. Now the threads, a little bit of oil, so we should use a brass brush. The brass brush is a little softer, that way you can remove it, the oil buildup, and not damage the flange. Just like that. Everything's going to be nice and clean so that when you put it back in, it's not going to create too much friction and you're not going to be pushing thinking that it's pushing against something. Instead, it's just some oils build up in there. There we are. Here we are. Now we're ready to put everything back in. Before we do, we got to clean up the inside of the hole where the spring goes. You want the spring to sit in some good surface, nothing dirty. So loosen up whatever is in there. It might be a little ground. Use our usual pick. And then with a vacuum, just suck all the dirt out. Once everything is nice and clean, put the 3 springs back in. Put the holder like that, just align it. And here's the final piece, the flange. Now the flange, remember, you got it now in this case. Before you start tightening the flange, you want to make sure that the threads align together. To be sure to have that, turn the flange clockwise, where it says towards the grosso, which is actually to unscrew the flange. Just to kind of make sure that it sits flat. You're here it's bumping at a certain point. That's because that's the beginning thread, so you're just going over it. So just let it bump. That way, here we are, just over the starting thread, and then push it towards fine. Maybe put a little pressure on 2 opposite ends, so that you have a even, so that the flange can sit even, and just turn towards fine, which is fine. Here we are. So we're turning counterclock. This is the opposite that you usually use to screw something in. Now, this is where it gets tricky. You have to screw it in until the motor can't run free. So push the burrs, the bottom burrs with your finger. They should be turning. So we want to turn this until they don't turn anymore. But don't crank it right against it. You don't want to ruin anything. You don't want to ruin the cutting edge. Here we are. So now it's not moving anymore. Now, to get a factory adjustment, you want to turn the flange 1/3 to 1/4. So 1/4 from here will be right here. So anywhere from here to here. Give it 1/4. Right here. Now we're at factory settings. So at factory settings, you can start adjusting your coffee depending upon what kind of roast you have, how much oil is on the beans. This is how you would get it once it's been made in the factory. So now we're going to test the grinder to make sure that everything went in place properly. So obviously have the grinder on. Then the best thing would be to activate the grinder with no bean first, just to make sure the motor is turning, nothing is touching. And then as it's running, just release the beans. They're going to spit out from the bottom. Check the grind, see if it's coarse or not. If it's fine, then you're ready to make some good coffee. Select it and run it. Well, this is it for today. Thank you for listening, and please check out our other videos.